Welcome back to the Group Practice Accelerator podcast, brought to you by Polaris Healthcare Partners, where we leverage decades of healthcare and business experience to drive growth in successful group practices just like yours. If you're a healthcare entrepreneur and you're interested in building, scaling, or exiting your group practice, you've found not only the industry's leading resource for business education, but a team of trusted advisors dedicated to helping you achieve and exceed your goals. In short, the team at Polaris creates clarity, confidence, and results. I'm your host, Jamie Polaris, and the Group Practice Accelerator podcast is on the air. Well, hey everyone, thanks for joining me today because we're going to back things up a little bit. We spent a lot of time on this podcast getting into the details that we all need around optimization and increasing profitability. But what if you have a dream to build your group practice and just really don't have a clear vision of that exact roadmap? Now, many of our listeners are entrepreneurs at heart, and I'm no exception. And what I know to be true, not only from my own experience, but that of those that I've mentored or observed, is that this is not the time to DIY it. And to unfold that a little bit, what I mean is this: the experts are experts for a reason. They've seen it all. They've done it all, and usually made really relatable mistakes at some point in their development, myself included. Well, what does that have to do with your dream of building? Well, if you stay with me here, we're going to uncover the most critical elements that you need to be thinking about even before you put anything into action, really before you even put a plan to paper, and maybe how defining some key points with the right experts can parlay into a greater level of certainty around your future success. And here with me today is our resident expert and group practice guide, Diwakar Sinha, Polaris founder and CEO, who is going to take us down an exploratory path that he's seen a lot of people take over the course of his career. And he's going to give us some things to think about that you might not expect should be included in how you map out your plan to build. Diwakar, welcome back to the show.
Jamie, thank you for having me on board.
Well, I'm excited about this discussion today because we're going to unwind things, like I said, and talk about really that whole entrepreneurial journey and maybe what people are trying to explore, how they arrived there, and what they want and why. So with that in mind, can you start by giving us just maybe a little bit of your experience in that? And then I have some questions around how that process can begin.
Yeah, so I think as practice owners are building their practices, obviously they're excited about building a business, right? They got into setting up their own practice or their group practice with the vision in mind. And as they're building their business, they have mixed emotions, right? Any business owner does. It doesn't have to be just with the healthcare practice. Could be a manufacturing business, could be an aviation business, could be a automation business, and any sort of business. In one hand, you set out with a plan in place to have a 5-year, 10-year vision. It could be just a 1-location business, could be a 15-location business. And as you're building that, you start to unravel some of the challenges of entrepreneurship that you may not have had as pre-entrepreneurship. And from location 1 to location 5 to location 10, wherever your journey is, within that. And could be the challenges around capital or uncertainty, and also life cycle, right? I mean, if you started your business in 2019, boom, COVID hit. If you started your business in 2021 coming out of COVID, you had different challenges, right? So depending on your entrepreneur journey and where you had different challenge to kind of think about. It's exciting to build a business. At the same time, it's also can be overwhelming as you're building the business.
Well, I'm going to rewind to something that you said a second ago. You were talked about emotions. I think that most of our plans to build, to grow, whatever that may be, in whatever kind of business, aren't they really rooted in some kind of feeling that you got from doing something else? So maybe we talk about most practice owners and what they're feeling as they're thinking about building a business, because that's got to come into play with a lot of conversations you have.
Yeah, I mean, I think as most practice owners, at some point they were associates somewhere, and they wanted to build a business because one came from a position of practicing and said, okay, this is the kind of practice I want to build for providing patient care. And then they also had a dream of entrepreneurship, providing better for their families, a better opportunity for themselves, and an enterprise they want to build and things they wanted to provide. And as they're building the business, they start to look at some of the challenges that come with it, which is what kind of capital do I need, and who do I bounce ideas off of? And they start thinking about, when they were not a business owner, they didn't have to worry about some of the things. They could just kind of walk in at, and again, I'm just picking artificial times. You're at 7:59 and clock out at 5:01, right? And
Mm,
because they're a W-2 employee,
right.
working for someone else. But when you're self-employed and when you're an entrepreneur, you don't really clock out. It is your business. You are going in, you're thinking about that business. And even though you might be not clinical or you might be not working in the business, you're always working on the business and thinking 6 months out, 9 months out, 12 months out. And you are consciously working on the business, maybe when you're in the business, but you're subconsciously working on the business even when you're not in the business, because there's challenges outside happening that are getting you to think about you might be thinking about something that happened on capital markets on Sunday that might impact healthcare on a Monday. And you said, geez, I got to think about this now on Monday. And even though you're not in the practice on Sunday, something came out in the news on Sunday that now impacts your business on a Monday. So these are things, just as an entrepreneur, you have to think about that you may not have to think about as a W-2 employee.
Well, and that's one of the things that I think a lot of people forget about being an entrepreneur is it is very emotional. It's very feelings based. There's excitement, there's uncertainty, there's doubt every stinking day, really, if we're honest about it. And those emotions, those feelings are all really natural. And if we kind of roll that into challenges, like how do we tackle that? Like learning what's happening in the market on Sunday and how does that apply to my Monday business? Like, what are some of the most common challenges then that business owners feel? You mentioned before about like having someone to bounce ideas off of, and I know having a good mentor is part of that. But what are some of those other challenges for them?
Yeah. So again, one is someone to bounce ideas from, right? So it could be a strategic advisor, it could be a mentor, could be a colleague, but it's good to be able to validate your position on something. And sometimes it's a partner within the business. So there's a lot of partnerships where people can go to a partner and say, hey, I'm thinking of doing this.
Mm.
That's a good process to go through also. Or sometimes in a partnership, there's different viewpoints,
Oh, yeah.
within a business. So sometimes you have to bring in a third party to kind of help understand what is a common ground within a partnership where our visions align within the business. So those kind of things. A big one, I think, this is in entrepreneurship, and again, is not bringing your challenges from work to home, because it is your income stream. It is what your family's dependent on. It is what you're thinking about all the time. So to not bring that workload, work stress to home, I think is a big thing. So I think the ability to manage that work-life balance is challenging, especially in the early years, or if you're expanding, because as you're expanding, one of the conundrums a lot of entrepreneurs have is, as you grow, am I going to take on more stress? And what does that stress look like? What does that journey look like? So I think those are things to think about. Some of the other challenges to think about is, how do they lead the team when they may not be at their 100%? Meaning not all days are great days. And if they're not feeling, how are they going to drive that success every day within their businesses? So, thinking about those aspects of it, leadership is an everyday thing, within their organization and driving that vision forward. So how do they do that on an ongoing basis? Because they are the CEO of their business. So to think about it that way. And we talk about even in their practice, if they're clinically practicing in a 2 days a week or 4 days a week, when they go in, their aura within that practice, how they are, is does that energy transfers within that practice, their
Oh, it
dental
sure
assistants, the
does.
front office, their hygienists, their patients, everybody feels it. So how they communicate and their tone and everything, that transfers, right? Energy transfers. So when I say leading the team when they're not at their 100%, they have to be able to overcome their challenges. So they might be looking and saying, well, our new patient flow is down, this month, but today I'm going to be my best and worry about the new patient flow when after 5 o'clock today, and think about that strategy. So thinking about those challenges as a business owner. Some of the other challenges is the ability to identify their vision and being able to pivot in real time versus being married to a vision. That's a really common theme for entrepreneurs. It's important to have a vision, and it's more important to understand when a vision is not working and the ability to pivot because the data is providing you that insight. We see entrepreneurs sometimes say, well, this is the vision I wanted to build. This is the business I wanted to build. And we absolutely, absolutely appreciate that because there's passion behind that vision. But at some point, the data is not supporting it or the execution is not supporting it. So, we always said in podcast, people, process, patient, flow. So if you don't have
Mhm.
the people or the process, we either have to make those changes or change the vision, kind of think about those things.
Well, and that's a
And
really
then,
tough thing as an entrepreneur is when you're so emotional about something, you're so excited about it that you really do get married to your vision because you've got this plan road mapped out in front of you and you feel like anything that comes at you that's going to disrupt that is a mistake. Well, it's not. And sometimes having the right mentor, consultant, whoever you choose to be alongside you, and hopefully you do have someone to do that, let them get their eyes on it. Think of this as a third party that doesn't have anything at stake except your success. So sometimes taking a step back from it and letting your roadmap take the other fork in the road makes all the sense in the world. It's just a tough decision as an entrepreneur. I get that.
yeah, and just the ability to provide an objective opinion, right? To say, hey,
Mhm.
you tried it, maybe give it another 2 months. And if, hey, maybe at the 2 month road, can we mutually agree that at 2 more months it doesn't work? We got to make it switch, right? Just to be able to kind of provide a level of checks and balances, for that entrepreneur or business owner for them. Some of the other challenges that, most business owners feel, again, we've talked about in our podcast, capital, human capital, that process of recruitment and retention, growth strategy, financing, getting some kind of, if they're looking at equity strategies, that's an ongoing challenges for any business owner as they're continuing to grow. What does that look like? Creating equity within their balance sheet. Another one we see fairly often is partnership challenges. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean like, hey, what does my partnership strategy look like? Do I have one? Now, they might be in a partnership today thinking about adding more partners. Should I have one? Do I bring in more partners or I'm at two partners? I'm at four partners. Do I have enough partners?
Mhm.
Why complicate things? I mean, and one could make an argument for that. I don't need more partners. I already have four. I already have two. I'm only at one. I don't want to bring in more partners because it complicates my growth strategy. I don't need that. I can make all the decisions. So kind of going through those processes of what that looks like, within the business, buyout agreements, buy-in agreements. If they're going to think about creating an equity plan for associates or executive team members as they grow their business, does that allow for faster growth if you have associates that have ownership within your business? And how does that drive an ongoing growth strategy and executive team members? And also succession planning with estate planning. I mean, that's a unique thing to think about,
Yeah.
estate planning. A lot of people don't think about estate planning as they're growing the business, but a lot of our groups are building meaningful businesses that are 5, 15, 25 locations, and estate planning and succession planning is meaningful for their success. And then lastly, again, just to kind of put a bow on it, what should the strategy be? Should it be acquisitions or de novos? And what's more meaningful of an outcome of creating equity and success? That's probably a very common question that comes in. What's more successful? And so those are kind of things for business owners to think about.
That is a lot to think about and a lot of challenges, but I mean, nothing that can't be overcome. It's just, it's a lot to think of outside of that chair time that comes into play, could change from day to day. But you mentioned succession plan and estate planning. That is one thing that people just, they forget about until later in their life, later in their career. And heck, tomorrow's not promised. You've got to have a good plan in place, whether it's your business or personal. Can't say enough about that. So, if I don't know exactly what my roadmap looks like, but I've got a solid vision of what I want and why I want it, what are my next steps?
I mean, I think, one of the key things that, somebody should be thinking about is doing a discovery day with us, right? In our
Mhm.
discovery day, if they know what their business goals are, their vision is, then we can help them, think about what their strategy and their roadmap should look like and their blueprint should look like. When people come to a discovery day, they spend a full day with us and we create a personalized plan for them. and they kind of think through a blueprint of what that should look like moving forward, and give them a lot of things to think about. Should they create a roadmap of de novos, of acquisitions, and address a lot of the concerns we talked about today of how to think through those challenges and what it should be for them moving forward as far as the process of equity capital or growth strategy.
Yeah,
But
walk
even
us
if they
through what that day looks like from start to finish, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, so typically when somebody contacts us, we discover what their goals are if they haven't identified a business plan, and about half of the people that contact us for Discovery Day, they don't have a vision or plan identified. They might have built something, and that's okay. And then so the goal for us in the Discovery Day is to help them identify what they've built so far and where they want to go. So that's more of a planning day together. It's a collaborative day together for them. And the other half have identified a business plan and say, here's what we're trying to build. Can you help us understand what we're trying to build is aligned with what we built? Because that's the pre-discovery day. So, and when they get here, prior to getting here, they might give us some financial information on their business, and we'll kind of
Mhm.
do a back of the napkin analysis and provide some level of insight at what they may have built so far. And it gives us insight into our discovery day. And so as they get into our discovery day, we do kind of do a refresher on what their goals and their visions for that day is. And we try to tackle all those objectives for that day to the best of our ability, right? Because, they're here for that day and we want to check off their goals, their questions, things like that. And, there might be one doctor, might be three partners within that business. And we want to address all their concerns about their business operating goals, their partnership goals, their capital goals, their vision goals, and understand why each partner may feel or why the business owner feels that that strategy might be there. And we try to customize a day to that schedule. And the goal is by around 2, 3 o'clock that afternoon, we've hit all those questions. And then around 2, 3 o'clock, we say, okay, now that we've addressed those questions, let's take the next hour to 3 hours, depending on when we finished up, to address what our go forward plan is coming out of that day. And
Okay.
we make sure that the principals walk out with, okay, this is what I need to be doing moving forward. And there's mutual agreement of what they need to be doing forward. So we want our principals to have a plan going forward of, hey, this is what I want to be doing Monday morning. Most of our discovery days are either a Thursday or Friday, some are on a Monday. And so I really call it a Monday morning action plan
Mhm.
because they leave on a Thursday or Friday. And then on a Monday, they have something for us to follow up with them on to say, okay, this is what we talked about. Is this something like that makes sense for you to move forward on?
Okay. And just for clarification, this is a one-on-one deal. This is not we invite a bunch of people, a bunch of different groups to talk about business plans. This is truly a day personalized just for you.
Yeah, this is a personalized day per business, right? So this is very much about one business. In a business, there could be multiple partners, that are coming in, but it's about one business. Obviously, we'll have seminars that we might be looking for that people should stay tuned for that we'll do in the future. That might be more, multiple business owners that Jamie will talk about in our podcast. But this is one on one.
Sure. And what I want to emphasize is that when you get together with someone in person, I mean, there's no better way to get to know someone than to sit across from them, learn about their business. Because while we all do a lot on Zoom and Zoom is very important, to sit down with someone and get to know what their dreams are and really dive into that together, I think that goes a long way to creating the most impactful business plan based on their what, their why, and then start implementing something from there.
Yeah, I think again the goal for these discovery days is for people to have that clarity,
Mhm.
of what they need to be thinking about. And again, it's okay not to have a plan or a vision coming into that day. And if
Yeah.
you have a plan, let us truly solidify why you have that plan and where you want to be coming out of that plan.
Yeah. Good call. And a lot to cover on that day as well. Well, Diwakar, it's always great to have you on the show. Thanks for helping our audience think through like what they're trying to achieve and why, because it's with that end in mind that we always talk about that we can start to build out that journey, right?
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, Jamie.
Oh, pleasure to have you. Well, we covered quite a bit here today and a lot to think about, but as you may have guessed, there's a lot more to consider. And we're here to support you. So go ahead and reach out. We'll be happy to set up a call. And if you want to learn about any Polaris expert advisory service, or maybe there's a topic that we haven't talked about yet or haven't talked about recently that you want to hear about, you can send us an email to info@polarishealthcarepartners.com, or you can reach us by visiting our website at polarishealthcarepartners.com. Thanks so much for being a loyal listener and subscriber. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a colleague who might benefit from this. And be sure to leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you on the next episode of the Group Practice Accelerator Podcast.